Good night and welcome to DLP TV. Our theme for tonight is Barbados Under Mottley, a Lost Paradise. Joining me tonight, my name is Malissa Howard and I am your host for tonight. Joining me tonight is Mr. Quincy Jones, the candidate for Christchurch East Central. To his right is Dr. Elvis Wickham, and to my far right is Mr. Damien Fanus. So tonight we're going to be discussing several systems in Barbados that are very critical to our existence, things that we use on a daily basis. So when you think of paradise, what comes to your mind? What makes Barbados a paradise?
Well, paradise by definition, is an ideal place, a place you want to be, a place where you're happy, where you're comfortable, where you're safe. So ideally, location. That's the definition of paradise. And in many respects, that was Barbados. A preferred place to live, a preferred place to work.
Well, when I think about Barbados as a paradise, you know that we were called the gem of the Caribbean Sea. And when you really analyze that, we were a place of envy because we had a very enviable educational system in the sense of our literacy rate. Our social systems were something to be envied in regards to our healthcare, our social net, and I guess these types of things. And plus, as a tourist destination, we are a beautiful country. So people wanted to come to Barbados to see the beaches, to visit St. Lawrence Gap, or to just traverse through Bridgetown and do shopping. So yes, we were a paradise.
Thank you.
For me, paradise for me was a sense of renewal. A renewal in our villages, in our neighborhoods, a sense of belonging and a pride of being a Barbadian. And also a protection among each other, being the brothers keepers, not only in the church, in our homes, in the workplace, in the different NGOs and in different groups. Paradise here in Barbados, where young people used to fly kites on during the kite season, and Christmas was one, and Queen's Park. The aim of paradise was always this renewable sense that Barbados is blessed, that Barbados is growing, and that Barbados continues to play its part, both by giving to each other, being the brothers keepers, but being a holistic view of protection among us. But I saw paradise as a home view, where it is more a paradise of loving each other, and we were so protected among that. That whole growing up, I could have gone by John Brown House, go by Mrs. Thing, and discipline could have been by anybody in the village.
Yes.
And that was the paradise I grew up in. A paradise where the family was the family and the family of the entire community.
And the family was the foundation
Correct.
for the community.
Correct.
How important do you see our social services?
I think our social services is very important, whether in education, whether in health, and the different aspects of how Barbadians see the social services now in this paradise. Yes, we would say what has happened to this paradise now. So crime has gone up 41% in crime. Our elderly is feeling unprotected. Some people are want to get home before 6 p.m. We have issues in our justice system that is very slow. We have rising costs of living, taxes every day. So the question would be, people will be saying, what has really become of Barbados now in this paradise? Are we truly paradise? And even with the social services, you have to ask yourself, are we really paradise? And I would tell anyone by clear conviction that Barbados is not a lost paradise. It's being tested. It is being what? Tested. And it is a nation in transition and a nation crying out for leadership. Leadership, not only in our parliaments, leadership in our homes, leadership in our classrooms, leadership in the management of our schools, leadership on the pulpits, and leadership in the villages and the corner shops. So I would say right now, we are not a lost paradise. We're just going through this testing far where we have to navigate, because we got to remember that back then is back then and this is now. We're in 2025. How do we judge paradise now? How are we judging paradise now? And we have to judge it quite different.
You said leadership.
Yeah.
Leadership could be good, leadership could be bad. So be specific. We need good, proper leadership.
We need definitely good, proper leadership, but we also need visionary leadership and servant leadership, where there's humility, where there's love, where there's bring back the morals. We definitely need the what's going to be more democratic leadership, where we also, get involved in what the process is, the people getting involved in the process. And that is what leadership is now needed. We don't need all the charismatic leadership no at the time. Leadership is for its time and place. And because of that, we have to determine, is this the time and place for it?
Okay.
On the point of leadership,
Yeah.
well, a lot rises on rises and falls on the question of leadership. As leadership goes, so do many organizations, homes, etc. Famous Bayesian saying, if the head is bad, the body can't be good. I'm not sure exactly how you will get that done. I agree with Quincy's point about democratic leadership. On the question of leadership as well, there's this belief among many that only one person can lead the country, which is so incorrect. We have a very capable civil service that's been doing what they do and can work very efficiently, has been doing that for decades. So the idea that only one person can run the country, is civil servants that keep the gears turning. The issue as far as leadership has been instructions being given and the vision being one where we have to ask the question, is this a vision for Barbadians? I remember very clearly, it was in September of 2020 when it was stated in a speech that the world has spoken, and it was about Barbados following the progressive nations of the world. What about Barbadians deciding what is for Barbados, as opposed to the progressive, quote unquote, progressive nations of the world deciding our agenda? But that was leadership at the time, still current leadership. So, and we have seen what has happened over the last few years under current leadership, where every sector is facing issues. Even the supposed bright spark of which they speak, which is the economy, that the economy is doing great in nominal GDP and debt GDP, and everything is bumpy. There's bumpy. Ask the majority of persons in this country, whether they feel that, whether they can identify with that. They clearly cannot. And that is supposed to be the bright spark.
Well said.
So in regards to leadership, I remember a couple of years back, there was a particular document that was circulated called the Covenant of Hope. And if anyone read that Covenant of Hope spoke about giving everyone a voice in regards to making decisions in where the country will go. Have we seen that? No, we haven't seen that. We've seen certain acts by this administration where that very viable pieces of the country were given away without even a discussion. There aren't any referendums in regards to certain decisions as it comes to Parliament or the Constitution or whatever. So then you have to ask yourself, when did this autocracy mindset, when did it set in? And you saw when it set in. It came in 7 years ago, roughly 7 or 8 years ago, where that the Barbadian people were divorced from making any form of decisions in regards to where the country is going to go, what certain social systems are to be taken care of or even invested in. I've seen now that even under this administrations, our social systems are somewhat failing. And even though that there is this cry out from the people to say, well, listen, there are certain things that are not happening the way that they should be. There's either silence or a total disregard of their voices. So leadership has to be empathetic. It has to be something that takes into account the mindset of the country and where the psychology of the country is at that point in time. And right now, Barbadians are scared. We're not getting any comfort from certain leaders in regards to the crime situation. Something they would coddle, they might even, in a sense, when they speak out in public, they seem to coddle the same individuals who are engaging in crime rather than using a firm voice. And so leadership cannot be weak, but in the same sense, it must also take into consideration the mindset of everybody and what they need to get through by and by, and to bring us back to where we once were. We weren't perfect, but there were certain things that did work. And now that this administration has taken over, we're seeing a gradual failing of those systems. And we need to address that and to hold people accountable.
Yeah, you said leadership is not weak. Our political leader, he always said, humility does not mean weakness. I want to apologize for the absence of the political leader, Mr. Ralph Thorne. He may join us later on the show. All right, right now we're going to present to you a video from our Senator, Mr. Andre Rowell, on the healthcare system.
The Democratic Labour Party salutes our public health nurses and all nurses across Barbados as they observe Public Health Nurses Week. We continue to be concerned about the chronic mismanagement, political indifference, and failure to prioritize frontline workers who continue to work under dangerous and unsanitary conditions. Equally troubling is the recent outbreak of a skin infection at St. Bernard's Primary School in St. Joseph, which forced the closure of the school for several days. Students presented with rashes and peeling skin on their hands. The chief medical officer was informed and gave assurances that he would investigate the source of the outbreak and facilitate industrial cleaning of the school, which has reopened. This approach to public health management must change. We urge the Chief Medical Officer and the Ministry of Health to commit to a transparent approach with timely updates and clear communication to the public, not secrecy and public relations. Another area of concern to us is the lack of security for our nurses. While they grapple with outbreaks and poor infrastructure, we have seen in recent weeks multiple attacks on nurses while traveling to and from work and at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. We extend our support to the affected nurses and wish them a full recovery, while calling on the government to ensure that counseling and security measures are provided without delay. Adequate security must also be deployed at healthcare facilities to protect both staff and patients. The situation is particularly dire at the psychiatric hospital, where nurse-to-patient ratios have fallen well below international standards due to staff shortages and government austerity. Current staffing levels reportedly see a mere 3 nurses attending to as many as 54 to 60 patients per ward, with no on-site security present to assist in emergencies. This not only endangers nurses, but also places patients at risk and makes it impossible to deliver quality care. We call on the Ministry of Health to abandon its top-down defensive approach and instead embrace a culture of inclusion, feedback, and openness. Nurses, patients, and communities must have a voice in shaping the future of healthcare. Ignoring these voices has led us to this crisis. The Democratic Labour Party remains steadfast in its commitment to defending healthcare workers, promoting patient-centered reform, and restoring a system in which health is a right, not a privilege, and certainly not a political afterthought.
All right, we have a doctor in the house, Dr. Wickham. Could you tell us about the situation that the nurses face in our healthcare system?
I think that Senator Worrell would have just spoken to the issue of the shortages. That is absolutely not ideal, those kinds of ratios. Simple reason being that you have a higher likelihood of missing a critical sign, a critical symptom, a critical feature, something that's happening. You just don't have enough eyes to go around. And in the case of the psychiatric hospital, that could certainly be potentially to their disadvantage as far as safety. We have the physical safety issue. We know of the recent incident at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, as far as the numbers, the ratio being not ideal, the missing of signs, symptoms, that then is to the patient's detriment.
Yes.
Because matters aren't attended to, aren't identified as early as they should be to effect appropriate management changes, etc. So, the individual, the person, our brothers, our fathers, our uncles, our grandmothers, they're the ones then who feel the consequences. So in the immediate, the nurses are burdened, extremely stressed, on a lot of strain. And just thereafter, the relatives, our relatives are the ones then feeling the ill effects from, not having the ideal management numbers.
So what, in your opinion, what is the ideal ratio, nurse to patient ratio?
I'm not familiar with what's the ideal ratio for the psychiatric hospital, never having worked there myself. It will vary from, depending on the type of ward, how acute versus chronic the patient that need to be looked after, stable versus unstable. So you'll know, for example, in an ICU setting, intensive care unit, you will have a much closer ratio than you would on a ward with very stable patients, then medical versus surgical, pediatric, obstetric, and gynae. So it will vary. The thing is, as Senator World pointed out, listening to the staff, right? The nurses are qualified. They will know what their ideal ratio is. Are they being listened to by management? Is management hearing and then passing that message on to government? Is the minister who is absent for long periods, figuratively or maybe literally, is he taking message then to cabinet regarding what is needed in the Ministry of Health for optimum functioning of staff and optimal health of patients? These are very serious questions to be answered. The end result of what we are seeing, though, is that it appears that is not the case. Either management isn't listening to the staff, or maybe they are, and then they're informing central minister who isn't listening, and maybe he is, and then he's passing on the message to government, and central government. And we know, government really in this country right now is one person who has different priorities. But bottom line is that we don't have the numbers of staff that we should. We don't have a lot of basic equipment that we should. And in this country right now, if you do not have deep pockets, you could foreseeably die of preventable, treatable illness just because you don't have the money, and the public health system as is may not be able to accommodate you in a timely manner. So you do not get investigations when you should and treatments when you should.
You mentioned deep pockets. The healthcare system, the budget allocated to this ministry is approximately $294 million. In your opinion, the money that goes into this ministry, is it adequate, or is more money needed?
From what we are seeing, as far as staffing numbers, as far as equipment issues, clearly the funds allocated is inadequate. Clearly. Inadequate. Yeah, not sufficient. Because how does it take so long to get a linear accelerator up and running in radiotherapy, functioning, where persons must have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars to travel to Trinidad or Colombia or Miami or somewhere to get treatment that should be available here? That we have doctors and nurses who are capable of providing the treatment here, they just don't have the equipment. How long does it take to do that if it's a priority? And there are many other instances, medication instances, testing instances. You know how long it can take in the public health system to get an ultrasound of your abdomen to determine whether you have gallstones? Many months.
Wow.
Months. It is fairly possible. How long it can take to get an appointment to eye clinic? Months. Appointment to cardiology clinic? 9+ months or longer. So there are a lot of issues. And bottom line is people then are suffering as a result.
I know most Bajans know of the issues in A&E, having to wait 3 to 4 days, just to see a nurse. Some will be in there for longer and still not be able to see a doctor. Damien, you want to tune in on this?
No, all of these deficiencies that we're seeing in our healthcare system, I don't think these things are happening in a vacuum. You can see that from this administration's approach, there has been a push to move away from the social aspect of healthcare to a more privatization of healthcare, because you see that they are putting resources into like places like Bayview Hospital with the urgent care, right? When was the last time you actually heard this administration spoke about anything about putting resources into the hospital? to address the certain deficiencies that are happening right now. I have not heard anything for probably about 7 years.
7 years, but you have a budget of 294 million.
Right, but then you have this budget that you've not, I guess you're not doing any, I guess, cost analysis or any assessment as to how the money is being spent, where are the deficiencies. But then there you see this push, and then these ceremonies now that are open to urgent care in terms of private institutions. You're not seeing the push coming back to the social aspect of healthcare, where the middle class and those that probably earn at the lower spectrum to actually benefit from, because healthcare was is a, how we should say, it was a determined right for all Barbadians. It was a fundamental right. It wasn't something that was just like a luxury. It was something that when we grow up and we knew about it, you can go to the hospital, right? And if you are not feeling well or you're sick, we allocated funds so as to help you get back on your feet, especially for those who could not afford healthcare on the higher scale, the higher earning scale. That now has been erased. Not only has that been erased, we've seen the erasure of the middle class altogether. So if you're going to the hospital to get some form of care, expect to wait 3 or 4 days because the priority is not the individual who cannot afford the urgent care or the places that up St. James and Whole Town that provide this type of this healthcare that you pay for. So these things don't happen in a vacuum.
I can tell you, the private facilities in Barbados, provide excellent care.
But you need money.
But you need money.
Yeah.
You need money. Outstanding care.
Yeah.
You can go in there, whether your pocket is deep, you can get whatever you need in a hurry. Investigations in a hurry, which then influence diagnosis, which then influences treatment. Excellent care, but you have to have money. We heard recently with the opening of the urgent care facility at one of the private hospital that concessions were being granted.
Yeah.
And there will be some public-private partnership that the public will somehow benefit by its taxes being used, and that is what concessions is. Taxes really then being used indirectly to help out a private facility. But we have not heard of any details, I can easily correct it, of how exactly that will work out. How will the public benefit facility? As I said, no bash to the private facilities. They provide outstanding care.
Excellent care.
But, if you have, for example, a kidney stone, or you need an ultrasound, you need a CAT scan, you need blood tests, you need anything like that being done on an emergency visit to one of the private facilities, you can easily spend $5,000 along with all treatment. How many Barbadians have $5,000 to spend just like that? You go to QH about the same thing, you can wait days. The doctors there know what to do, the nurses know what to do, but there's just not enough of them. You don't get investigations done in a timely manner. And as a result, you don't get treatment in a timely manner, because how can you treat what you don't know?
But healthcare, proper healthcare, public healthcare is supposed to be a basic need.
It is absolutely a fundamental right. It is a fundamental right. And in our system of government, our system of public health financing, because where the system is funded by taxes paid by the collective of the country, we absolutely deserve better than what we are getting. I've had so many examples over the years, and increasing in the last few years, of persons who you talk to who pass through my office, and I'm in private practice, and you hear the details of the frustrations. I've had persons that I have referred to the public health system for further investigations and management because they cannot afford it privately, and they wait forever. I've had persons referred to A&E who needed to be in A&E, who needed to be in hospital, wait for 3 days only to be sent home and told that you ideally should be here, you should be admitted, but we have no space for you. You'll have to go back home.
So you're saying we don't have adequate beds at the hospital?
Definitely not.
We have a comment online by Dawn by Nature. What is cheaper, sending patients away for treatment, or fixing or buying equipment and hiring sufficient staff? Quincy?
I think Dawn cheaper, but Dawn by nature, definitely buying equipment and hiring sufficient staff, especially now. I know that there are many nurses that do the program at the Barbados Community College,
Mm-hmm.
and is finding it difficult to get into the nursing, the nursing programs at the hospital or the clinics, which I find very not right. I think that if you have done the program successfully at the Barbados Community College, you should be automatically filtered into the different clinics and hospitals as an internship, and if an internship to full employment, like how it's done like in rotation of the medical doctors. Holiday. It's a smooth rotation. And they're finding it hard. Nurses are finding it hard to get in, but we are bringing in nurses and say that there's a
shortage, a decline,
or that they need more nurses. But I think we have the nurses, but we just need to have an easier transition from BCC to
removing the red tape.
The red tape.
But our nurses that train at BCC are heavily requested in other nations.
In other nations, it's fine that we have a disrespect towards this paradise of our medical, of our nurses in this paradise, and also we have the nurses, and then we are not protecting them. So now we are having nurses being attacked at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital or at clinics, and it's sad because they are working not an 8-hour job. I might be wrong, but some of them have to do double shift or triple shifts, and they're tired. And what's hurting me, and what should hurt Barbadian public, is that they're trying to save the souls and the lives of persons in the hospital.
Yep.
And as soon as they finish work, they're being attacked. And we are they're always saying we only take things serious when something happens. Serious. And God forbid if something definitely happened to a nurse, and it is more serious than what is happening than just robbery, fatal or anything like that, which I do not want happening. Because this is still Barbados. It's not whether B or D. A nurse is doing the work of the people. And in this paradise, no nurses should be given heavy security personnel in terms of increasing lights, in terms of parking facility, the security over there, walking the nurses to the cars, different little small things. Every little small draw. I always used to say to my charity that every drip of water adds to the cup, and every cup adds to the pond, adds to the river, and adds to the ocean. But we need all hands on deck. And the entire management of the hospital needs to really look into the aspect of nurses in terms of the transition from BCC to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, in terms of that it should be more direct process. And 2, the protection of nurses. 3, the increased payment of nurses in terms of salary. And 4, there are the clinics. I heard the Prime Minister talk about, or the Minister, the Prime Minister. I don't know.
The Minister of everything.
I'm not going to say that. Get me some locked up or anything like that. But what I would say is that we are hearing different. We are hearing that the clinics need to be maintained, and there are a lot of clinics, including geriatric hospital, that you can see the mold in the roof.
That's true.
Mold in the bathrooms.
But before you move on to the clinics, we have a comment here online from Tin T Ward. What is the status of Harrison Point in the north that was refurbished for C-19? Is it in use? Anybody know?
I am not aware of it being in use. Certainly, I know Senator Worrell has asked that question over and over and has raised the issue of the Harrison Point facility. Millions of taxpayer dollars spent to get it up to the level of a hospital with acute intensive care management capabilities, and it is just sitting there idle. The last thing I heard about it publicly was in the 2023 estimates debate. Maybe government said something about it since, but on that point, government doesn't exactly have a record of maintaining its facility. Can't even say a good record. It doesn't have a record of maintaining. It's always playing catch up when something goes wrong. And if I could be corrected, but I'm pretty sure one of the ministries or responsibilities that was listed early on in the first cabinet was a minister responsible, or one of the minister's responsibilities included maintenance. What has become of that? Government buildings are not maintained.
No, they're not.
So when there's an issue, then you're playing catch up, and you clearly will spend more, and there's inconvenience and the illness to staff etc. But the Harrison Point facility, we absolutely believe, should be serving the people of Barbados.
Yes, because clearly one hospital is not adequate.
It's inadequate.
Correct. So we move on to the polyclinics. I remember the David Thompson Polyclinic in St. John. This was supposed to be a 24-hour polyclinic. Clearly, we need another facility to be available to the people of Barbados for healthcare. What's going on with the polyclinics in the island?
Regarding the David Thompson Polyclinic specifically, the people of Barbados need to demand of their government to know why more isn't being done with that facility. It had significant capability, and it was certainly built or constructed in a way that would have allowed for it to be used as a 24-hour facility in many regards. Why is that not the case? All of the polyclinics have maintenance issues, building issues in one way, shape, or form. That all of them do. Again, we pay a lot of taxes in this country. I think the key issue seems to be that healthcare is not a priority.
No.
Public healthcare.
Public healthcare. So
Public
actually,
healthcare.
it's not a priority for this government.
No.
Token words and gestures and appreciation may be paid here and there, but it clearly is not a priority to this government. People have been crying out for years about situation at QEH, the situation at the polyclinic, and what did we hear? We're building another hotel.
Yeah, be late to build a hotel.
How does that help sick people who are suffering, dying?
So what, in your opinion, what is the difficulty in having a 24-hour facility available?
A lot of logistics to work out, you know, security, absolutely. Look, we haven't spoken in any length about the security situation, but security certainly has to be paramount. And then adequate staff and numbers to avoid burnout rotation. There are persons within the Ministry of Health capable of working out those numbers and putting proposals to government and say, hey, look, this is what we will need if this is what we're going to do. And then it will be for government to identify the funding. But we pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah, we do.
We have been heavily taxed over the last 7 years, more than in any 7-year span prior.
But I find it strange that we say we don't have enough staff when there are many citizens who are trained doctors that cannot find employment and they're still on island. Why can't these individuals be utilized? Remove the right yet, as Quincy said, for the nurses, and you have staff available.
It comes down to the will. Where is government's will? As I said, healthcare does not seem to be a priority. How often do you hear the Minister of Health speaking on anything regarding issues in health when they blow up? How often? You could probably count on one hand the number of times you've heard him for the year so far.
Yeah, you don't even see him in Senate.
How often? So healthcare clearly doesn't appear to be a priority. Government has other priorities at the moment, and the healthcare of the population doesn't appear to be one of them.
All right, one of the recent announcements was asking citizens to pay for a report at the polyclinic. What are your thoughts, Damien?
Oh, don't even get me started on that, because I actually have a very, very, how should I say, close proximity with a very frustrating situation in regards to one of those reports. Now, I'm in a situation where that there was a claim made against a private practitioner, private doctor practitioner. The individual was administered some wrong medication, went to the hospital. They had to be resuscitated. Thank God that she is alive. She's right now in the process of filing a claim. We've paid the hospital since December for a report. How much months that would be now? Say about 8?
Well, 7. Yeah.
7? 7 months? 7 months. I've written 4 times, visited twice. She herself had visited numerous times. Now the question has to be asked, how does it take 7 months to write a medical report that you've already paid for? How is that not tantamount to theft? That you paid for a service and you've not received it yet. Now, the last assurance I had gotten, I was told that they had to wait on a consultant to sign it. They had to wait on a doctor to sign it, but it was on this doctor's desk, I was told, for 4 months.
So it was waiting for one particular signature
or maybe
for
two.
7 months.
For 7 months, it was prepared. Then they said that no, we got to prepare it
How
again.
long does it take to sign a document?
I have no
Couple
idea.
seconds?
I have no idea anymore because I'm assuming that, I mean, it's just simple as doing that. But apparently it takes 7 months to file and sign a report. Now, I was going to keep that to myself, but really and truly though, I've heard a particular person say something to me that struck me. Justice delayed is justice denied. You understand me? So if you're in a situation where you yourself, you're probably earning maybe a little bit above minimum wage or minimum wage, you got injured, you are trying to process a claim. The hospital was the person who attended, the people in the hospital were the people who attended to you. You need a medical report to get your claim processed. And 7 to 8 months later, you can't get it processed because you're waiting on a medical report. Tell me if you cannot even get medical reports out of the hospital, how are we going to get them out of the polyclinic that is understaffed, basically, and has a strain in resources in regards to doctors and nurses and other auxiliary staff? And it's something that needs to be said, and I'm going to bring awareness to it finally, because you can't come and tell me that you're going to put these in place and put another cost on the Barbadian people when you can't even efficiently provide the service that you are charging for. Yeah. And that is wrong. And that needs to be said.
Yeah, obviously, I don't know the specifics of that situation. What I can tell you, one of the main reasons for delays in getting a report has to do with staff and numbers. Because in the public health system, and I will speak to privately shortly, doctors, whether polyclinic or hospital, don't have a time allotted to deal with like administrative matters, paper matters, and preparing reports. They have to squeeze it in somehow, somewhere, middle of the night. I remember doing many reports in the middle of the night, when I'm at home, because there was no other time really to do them during the course of the day. Unless something has changed in that regard recently, that was the situation. Certainly what I have done in private practice is I never take payment for a report until it's finished. That's because if I've been paid for a service and 7 months later it hasn't been provided, as you said, that's theft. So that's my stance in private practice. I only take payments for reports when those reports have been completed, and I try to work on reports as quickly as possible. But the issue is time, because those doctors are doing so many other things at the same time, and that is something that needs to be looked at. Some jurisdictions, other parts of the world have, doctors have time to deal with matters of reporting, getting records up to scratch, etc. That is not the case in Barbados with the short numbers.
For me, I think what's happening now with reports is that government is finding its way to get away from the word free healthcare.
Yeah.
It's slowly. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if Barbadians are watching, but let me add 1+1. Recently, we opened a new extension to the private hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
And it says that this hospital is for you to get better service and stuff like that. That's payment.
Come and pay.
So that's no longer free. Then you say there's a reports, and reports has to be paid. That's no longer free. You are also saying to persons that are doing nursing program that if you fail the exam, you can't resit the exam. You have to start back over, which is a cost on the nurses. So that's no longer what?
Free.
So I am seeing elements of the word free healthcare going towards pay or private healthcare. I might be wrong, but I try to add 1+1. And not only that, what I might find it very interesting is that the freeness is now, I'm hearing the word insurance coming up very regular from the ministers are responsible for the economy. I don't really know the name.
For all sectors.
Right. But for all sectors. But the word insurance is now peeping into the free healthcare to tell persons that you need to have health insurance so you can get involved in the different insurance packages so that you can be protected. So I don't know.
The thing about that is a majority of Barbadians cannot afford private health insurance.
Right.
And I will make one slight correction, Quincy. Free healthcare was not free. A lot of taxes are extracted from the Barbadian population by various names. A lot of taxes are extracted to pay. So you're then being asked to pay again by going to a private facility, having already paid by way of the taxes that have been extracted. There's even a health levy that comes out at present. So it wasn't actually free. We had already paid for it, paid ahead by virtue of the taxes extracted. Now you're being asked to pay again.
Right. I was using the word free in its loose terms.
Yes.
We have a comment here online from the one about taxpayer. Maureen Denny, I am a taxpayer. I also have private insurance. I went to the A&E and wanted to pay via my insurance, but the QEH does not allow that. This should be a way for the hospital to earn revenue.
Hospital doesn't allow that.
Yeah, regarding what would be required, I'm sure there's some administrative matter there, a government policy change. I'm not sure. But as I said, it is not free, as was pointed out by another comment. Taxes are extracted from us, by virtue of the various measures government has put in place. More taxes has been extracted in the last 7 years than any other administration has had the luxury of having at its disposal. And yet we have a system that is as broken and busted as it is.
We have another comment here from Cam Har. Mottley is moving away from free, but Barbadians are now earning a minimum wage of $4.50 or $5 US per hour in 2025. So our pay is not really moving, but our expenses are rising. Now, how can we afford to live here?
And that is the thing with the minimum wage going up as it did. I don't know that it was thought through fully, but I put it to a couple teenagers, and I asked them what will be the knock-on effect of what do you think will happen as a result of the minimum wage going up, a business now being forced to pay a little more. Well, if nothing else happens in the economy, just a little extra money you put in person's pocket, what do you think will happen? And it was clearly stated, well, the businesses will find a way of getting that extra money back by way of increased cost of goods and services. Because the reality, the cost of doing business in Barbados is ridiculously high. And you have put now an additional cost on businesses. Businesses will do what businesses do, find ways of making money and getting that back.
Being profitable.
So the population ends up being squeezed further. Very few people can afford, private health insurance. On that point, I would advise, particularly younger persons, the younger you are, any insurance policy costs a lot less. The premiums are a lot lower the earlier you start. So I would advise any young person, you start working, sit down, crunch your numbers, talk to your insurance person. We got some insurance people here. And let them work out a policy for you. It will cost you a lot less getting policy at age 22 than it will be at age 30. You also, at the age 22, for example, have fewer health conditions that may count against you compared to age 30, age 35. So, advice for any young person, you try to get those policies as early as possible, soon after you start working.
All right, our last topic will be on medication. I know that on a consistent basis, a lot of medications are not available to the patient. And then there's an issue with the delivery system to the homes for the elderly and what's not. What can you tell us about the delivery system of the medication?
I don't know much about the delivery system and how that works. As far as the medications themselves being available on island, that's a matter between the drug service and the companies that they have given the tenders out to ensure that the medication you can supply this particular medication or for the period of the tender, which tends to run about 2 years. There will be shortages, there will be things happening internationally that may impact availability here locally, but there are a number of companies that bring in medications. The shortages, from my vantage point, with good planning, projections, and so on, shouldn't occur as often as they do. Quite often what you'll have, though, is the generics that maybe, but generics is a term that refers to a cheaper version of a medication than the original one that maybe came out a few years earlier. You often have a situation where the generic may not be available, the generic that is now on tender, brought in from a company other than the original, but the original may still be in the country. We've had many instances of that, but the original is not on the Barbados drug formulary, so persons would have to pay for it entirely on their own on the outside at significant costs. And again, persons can't afford that. So you may have a medication, equivalent medication that's available, but it's not on the formulary cost that they can't afford.
No problem. All right, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is education. What are the current problems you're seeing in our educational system? Damien, let's start with you.
I think that in regards to how we assess our intelligences, right now we have a 11 plus testing system that only caters to two types of intelligences, which is logical arithmetic and linguistics. But we know that there are other intelligences out there, whether it's spatial, whether it's whether it's spatial or in terms of like dealing with other persons, like interpersonal and so on. You cannot ask a monkey, or let's say an elephant, you can't expect to take the same test a monkey with the elephant would take. It's like asking an elephant to climb a tree, but if you ask a monkey would scale it. So basically then you're putting our youngest individuals in situations where that you're testing them, but you're not catering to their intelligence. So the 11 plus already puts them at a disadvantage. So we need to take a holistic approach when it comes to intelligences. It's broad based. So you can't expect to come and say at 11 years old, we're only going to test you on 2, when there are probably about 4 or 5 that are applicable, that you can probably set up a system where that if you can cater the school or particular schools to focus on that particular intelligence, whether it's musical, whether it's spatial, whether it's arithmetic, whether it's linguistics, whether it's in body kinesthetic, which means that you're a sportsman-like, then so be it. But then you can't expect to pigeonhole people with just 2 particular intelligences and leave the rest to swim for themselves. That is why individuals will fall through the cracks.
All right, Dr. Wickham, what are the issues that you're seeing in our educational system?
That's a long answer. At this point, I will say primary. Let me focus there. The common entrance, which is done at the end of primary, we have to get it right from very early on. A lot of time and effort and loads of money was spent talking about reimagining education with an emphasis on what is done at the secondary level. Yet our children, to Damien's point about the different intelligences, many of them arrive at 11 plus not having been fully developed or had opportunity for their intelligence to be brought to the fore, to be assessed in that regard. Our programs cared for them. Many who may not have medical issues, but bad social circumstances that did impact on their learning, because there are medical issues that could impact on learning. But bad social circumstances, bottom line is they reach 11 plus, not having been properly prepared for it, slipping through the cracks year after year after year after year. I really felt that a lot of our focus should be on addressing issues in the primary, for including the same assessing how children learn. Better to do that in the primary than now try to figure that out in secondary, having been frustrated by issues regarding 11 plus exam. Is to your point, David, is like testing a bird on how well it can swim on the water. But that is primary level. Too many children are just being passed along to the next year, to the next year, to the next year, when it is known that there are issues, but those issues aren't being dealt with. So you are setting them up for failure at an 11 plus exam, for which their particular intelligence may, isn't suited, but they were just passed along in the system and not having properly been assessed. The psychologists in the Ministry of Education, that area is grossly, on the fund. The Ministry of Education clearly needs more clinical psychologists to help them with the myriad of problems, because if they're dealt with earlier on, identified, treatment plans put in place, support measures, mechanisms put in place, we will see fewer issues by the time these children are ready to go transition to secondary level.
But you said that area it needs more money being pumped into it. But the reality is approximately $299 million is allocated to the development in education. So where's the money going? You're seeing a decrease of individuals excelling at a high level. You're seeing a higher failure rate. And this is at the development level. You said it's primary school. So where's the money going? You have $299 million allocated to this.
You would think that that would be sufficient to see better than we are seeing. I'm sure more is needed, but it has to do with how assessing what we've been doing, not just keep doing it because what we've been doing is what we've inherited, and look at the best use of resources. But clearly we have to identify problems at an earlier stage than we are currently identifying, and actually put measures and support systems in place to help those children and those families. Far too many children reach 11 plus undiagnosed, not having been helped, and being forwarded onto a secondary system that really doesn't suit their particular intelligence or the challenges that they have. More frustration, 5 years in the secondary system to exit without anything to show for, either in terms of academic qualifications or practical skills that they can then use to help them earn a living in the adult world. Far too many children just get shoved along the system.
Quincy, you're the teacher among us.
I would say educator. Right? There are several problems facing the education system. And I know that Dr. Wickham spoke about the primary school, but I think that the issue starts from nursery. Under the Democratic Party, they did the Maria Holder nursery schools were actually building out in different parishes, the Maria Holder, where even how the school, the environment had looked, how the classroom had feel, that you started to see transformation occurring in the nursery area between the 3 to 5 year olds.
Sorry, when you said how the area looked, you meant like colors.
The colors and the layout.
They're very bright.
And stuff. Because remember, children are attracted to those sort of colors, and they learn better in a more modern environment, based on the various statistics that were done. So when the government on the Democratic Party, but the minister at that time, were doing the nursery, they were trying to make the nursery schools more developed, more modern, that the children feel more welcome and more happy to come to school. We are now seeing issues in the primary schools, but then the issues then get to secondary, where the children think that they are men and women and they can't change or stuff. So we have several issues. We have discipline issues. We have teacher burnout, and that's major. We have aging facilities. A lot of the buildings, both primary and secondary, and some nurseries need definitely facelift. Also, to curriculum relevance, it cannot be just be coding. Children cannot read, so it makes no sense doing the coding if the children can't read the code.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds real. Then we have to look at pass rate. We are promoting children now underneath 30%, underneath 25%, and promoting them the next year group without providing a proper remedial program. So let me give a good example. There are some middle schools that a child passed for. Some middle schools are doing 14 to 15 subjects in first form. Remember, they just went from 11 plus or primary school doing that's 4 or 5 subjects to now 14. And they passed the school at 40%, 50%. So you're now moving up the curriculum from just 4 to now 14 subjects or 15 subjects. The older secondary schools, I might be wrong, have less subjects. Some schools are doing only 10 subjects and 11. Their students pass with 90%, 80% from these schools. So the question is, why are middle schools doing so much curriculum child that needs to just get at least 7 subjects in first form to get him adapted to the new transition into secondary schools? I think we need to cap from all schools how many subjects is to be taught in first form, and then you gradually go to second form, and then options go into third form. But that's not currently being done. So we need curriculum relevance, and not curriculum relevance meaning coding, or robotics. But a child we need to go back to reading and not just English language, but they're trying to force English language, English literature. Now the child cannot read. So they can always have problems where in both the English language and definitely English literature.
Yeah.
So then when the child come home with a report of 10% in the exam or 15%, did that child did not perform to his ability? But was the child given the correct resources to prepare him for that level? And the answer might be no. So we have a major issue with curriculum relevance. Next issue we have in schools, and I could speak so heavy about education.
You could probably take the whole part.
Another issue that we are facing is classroom numbers in the classroom.
Too many students to one teacher.
You have some
I want to pause here a minute. I spoke to a teacher who had an experience working both public and private. We had a discussion about the pay. For as long as I can remember, I went along thinking that private teachers that work at private schools were paid more than teachers at the public schools. But she told me that was not the case. So I asked her, so how comes these teachers put in more effort in making sure that the students perform at a very high level? And she told me it comes down to 2 simple things: teacher to student ratio, and the aids that were available to the teacher in teaching the student. So what can you tell us about that?
You are going down the same road, the same path. So another 2 major issues is the classroom numbers and the resources in the classrooms. In private schools, and even overseas in different countries like Cayman Islands and the Bermuda, when you go into the classroom, you have the projector, you have all the resources available to teach the class. At secondary school, I got one in the department. One projector in the
there's one in the whole private school.
Or one in the whole school that working properly.
But at a private school, you will see a projector in each class.
Correct. So even though I don't know what they pay because I'm not getting involved in that. I would still like to pay increase both in primary and private. Right? So I think all teachers right now need to be paid. Right? Whether private or public. So I ain't looking down that road. But the classrooms are too much. You have like 36 children in a class. It is so bad right now is that some teachers can't even get to the back of the classroom.
Can I share a horror story with you when I had my brief time teaching?
Yes.
You were a teacher?
You were a teacher?
I didn't know that.
I'm a jack of all trades. I'm actually old enough to be a jack of all trades. I remember when I was teaching PE for a very brief time. I was a junior teacher, and the timetable came out, and it had scheduled 4 Form 4 classes to come out at this particular period, these 2 periods. So you would assume that, all teachers can be on deck, but some days it wasn't that. It was me alone with about 100 students. And when you have 100 students, teaching doesn't take place. All it is supervision. So the way that where it was at the time, the pavilion was on a hill, the pasture was down on like a lower level, the court was up here on the same level I was. So I had to divide the basketball court and the netball court, get somebody a netball, get somebody a basketball, get somebody a cricket bat and a ball, get somebody a football, the second lane, sit down next to me on the pavilion. And all I could do was supervise. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is that I would hear that there was complaints. Fanus in teaching, I'd be
You
like,
can.
but I'd be, how can I manage? How can I effectively teach and manage a class of 100 students? So you saw that not only that there wasn't resources, or there wasn't sometimes where teachers, they probably couldn't come, or they were ill or whatever. There was the bad scheduling, and then there were individuals who, for some lack of, I don't know, intelligent acumen, or just being facetious, will go and complain and say, well, Fanus in teaching, but how could you teach? So then you found people not appreciating the fact that you would want a smaller class size, your own colleagues, you want a smaller class size so that you could effectively teach. And I can tell you it was rough. It was rough.
And what is needed now in classrooms, or better yet, to bring back education to the system, we did something called the Schools Positive Behavior Program, which was highlighting the behavior expectations of students, and not only that, rewarding students for what they're doing good, and not only that, providing positive messages for them in the classrooms, as well as inviting different mentors to come into school. I think the government needs to really put more now emphasis into that program that was done or have started in the other administration, and put more resources there, because under that program, the Schools Positive Behavior, you saw teachers getting involved, children getting involved, parents getting involved, as well as the business community. So it was like a buy-in that was happening, where the children started to feel good. Children started to see the picture in the hall as the best behaved child, or the most motivated, or there was always something when you did something positive for the week. Even the most disgusting child. No, and when you put his name up there, right?
He didn't want to be there.
Listen, he felt like honor, you know. He said, Mr. Jones, you see my name there? Man, I'm the boss of the week. Right? So those are the things what we need to get back to the classroom, or get back to schools. But we need to fix, but we want to do everything transformational. But sometimes it's not transformational. It's just something simple.
We want transparency without substance.
Right. And sometimes we just need to do little baby steps. One, if you really want to make a change, Minister of Education, start with classroom numbers. If you really want to make a change in Minister of Education, start with the aging buildings and start dealing with one school at a time. If you want to make a change, start with curriculum relevance and bringing down and reducing schools that the children don't have all that load of subjects, but at least try to have 7. Make sure that the 7 is given its full potential, its full weekly course time, instead of doing 2 periods in maths and then 2 periods in geography, 2 periods in social studies, 2 periods, and that is just 2-period thing. At least give a child in English as in reading 6 periods, so that you increase the period time of the subject, and I guarantee you that the children are going to perform. Now, if that child does not perform, because not every child will perform to that, then we know that that child needs a special program that when guidance counselors can come involved and stuff.
Quincy.
And not only that, we need to do with discipline. Sorry, but I was
gonna tell you. I was gonna tell you, save something for the manifesto.
But know that you're on discipline.
Yeah.
How important is instilling discipline and respect in students in aiding learning?
You they need to have discipline, both teacher to student and student to student and student to parent. Why I say student to parent? There's some students that are actually very disrespectful to their parents. And it seems that the students are more the parent than the parent. Then you have the issue where students are very disrespectful towards teachers. And teachers are not given the full support when they do their reporting and hand in the documentations. Nothing is done. It takes long to even get to see the punishment. And if there is punishment, the child is back to school the next day that just disrespect a teacher. We really got to get serious with discipline, because if you don't, I came from Dayton Griffith School. You know how you always boast with the different schools? I came from Dayton. Dayton. And I'm being a head boy down there, right? Our school motto is discipline guarantees success. And one of the things that Dyton River School used to push at that time was discipline. That was under Hutchinson, that was under Miss Mosley, the different principals. I won't call them names, but shout out to all of them that are still alive, right? But what I would say is that we need to go back to something called restorative justice.
Yeah, what's that?
Oh, it's sweet name.
Yeah, you're teaching me. Teaching me. Yeah.
Take me to school, Quincy. Take me to law school, Quincy.
So when you have restorative justice, all you're doing is bringing the victim and those who were part of the incident in a circle. And once you bring them in a circle, involving the parents of all sides, the witnesses, and everything, and we have a discussion what you thought was the correct way, so that the children can explain, one, what had happened, two, what is the best way to deal with it, and three, what do you think it should be a punishment. So the child has to decide what they should be punishment. After they're going through this whole reflection, they say, all right, I think I definitely need to take 2 days of reflection home, or I definitely need to do a community cleanup or different things. Because once you get children understanding what they have done wrong, there's respect in them.
Yeah.
In my classroom, right, I am very strict. I am very strict to the corner. But when it goes, say, Jones, that's my man there, that's my boy, that's my teacher there. And because they understand, yes, you have the serious side of Jones, but then you have the cool teacher. So you have to learn not to do too much cool. And you have to learn to do not too much, be disciplined and too strict.
So it's a
you have
balance.
to have what's called a balance. And
right.
what education needs now in this whole system is balance. Balance in our buildings, balance in our classroom, balance in our discipline, and balance in everything. Sorry.
Right. I remember going to school, there was a strong presence of the guidance counselor. But now that I am hearing that some schools don't even have a guidance counselor. What's going on there?
Some schools do have a guidance counselor, some have more than one guidance counselor. And the reality of the chat, let me ask the children, will you go to your guidance counselor or a teacher? They say they'll go to the teacher. Guidance counselors talk too much. Are they not? What has to happen is that guidance counselors need to make themselves more relatable, make themselves comfortable, because always the echo is when you're going to the guidance counselor, is here for the is here outside the classroom
or in the staff room,
right? And that's why children is now more going towards a teacher. So we need to find a way that guidance counselors are more relevant. I'm not knocking them down, but they need to. There are days that guidance counselors are trying to be doing new things. They're doing expos and different activities that are making the children get involved into doing the business and stuff like that. But there's still the aspect of discipline that needs to be not only discipline, but a lot of mental health issues.
Children coming through a lot of stuff. And what I'm even seeing now, which is probably not being talked about, is a lot of children are coming to school hungry. And by coming to school hungry, you're now seeing that there's long lines in the school meals in secondary schools. The school meals lines, and now the children, once a time, a child used to hide or they want to be shamed to know that they're getting to get school meals. Now,
school meals is free meals, secondary school?
At school meals, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And the lines are getting and the children don't. They say, I'm hungry, sir. I'm going to get my lunch. I get my oranges, get my banana. And because it's so dire now that they do not care no longer about what the image of the public thinks.
Yeah. They
because,
just want food.
And what a child told me up to yesterday, and I didn't even honest. That thing hurt me when he said that that this is his lunch. I asked him, this is the last week of school. So it's like, out of this respect, we don't stay home. Right? Don't get in trouble in the last week. He said, but sir, the 2 reasons I come into school, and you can tell me if I'm lying, and anybody can tell me if I'm lying. The 2 reasons why I'm coming to school is because, one, I am getting lunch money for the week, but when vacation kick in, we ain't getting no money. I mean, they can't go buy nothing. So right now they're saving. And 2, this is their only meal for the day.
Wow.
That's hard.
So that's reality.
That's hard.
When they get home, what some children do is even carry home extra school meals through the guidance counselor. So they give them extra school meals because it's not going to feed a brother And look, sister,
System.
some children right now are parents in your household because parents have to work.
I have a question for the doc. Is hunger a possible link to the increased violence in school?
Most definitely.
Mhm.
But definitely, I mean, when you're hungry, so many, your stomach burning, grumbling, keeping noise, your head hurting, you can't focus, you can't concentrate. It is certainly a possible link, along with many other factors. Hence the need for, targeted guidance counseling and other interventions, because our children are coming to school with a lot of concerns. Hearing Quincy talks just now, but the economy is doing great.
It's true. And we just got a wage increase.
But the economy is doing great, and
So-
the wages better, and
Wages
we're
better.
hearing of people's daily realities, and there are those out there who would want to say that we're stirring up stories that don't exist, but this is people's realities. This great economy clearly isn't working for many Barbadians. That you have so many children going to school on a daily basis hungry. How are they supposed to focus on studies? Blood sugar is dropping through the floor.
Mhm.
What might be an added byproduct to that is that if you have a student who probably comes to school without any money, he might engage in behaviors where he's taking money from other students.
Yes.
So then that's how the violence then really kicks in. So then you're setting them up for failure early.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation where the middle class is actually being erased altogether, there's an attack on the middle class, and it seems like we aren't cognizant of it, but there's an attack on the middle class. There's no more middle class. It's those who earn affluently
Yeah.
and those who are on the lower spectrum. There's no more middle class. So then those individuals who have children and have to send them to school without any money, or who have to rely upon school meals, then you find children would then engage in deviant behaviors where they take from another. And then that particular student who was taken from, he goes home and said, well, mommy, somebody snatched my money. And said, well, I ain't raising a punk in this house. So if he come and snatch you money, you best go, you know what I mean? Get it back. So then you see how the cycle begins.
Yeah.
So then how can we sit here and be proud that we are punching above our weight in an international community when there are people right now, the minimum wage isn't even affecting, or the middle class has practically disappeared.
Yeah.
So then now if the middle class has disappeared, those people who earn at the middle class level, that affects their children as well.
Yeah, the economy is clearly more important than we may think. Is affecting students at school, causing violence.
Or the illusion
Yeah.
that the economy is doing great
Yeah.
is more important than actually affecting people's lives holistically and having given them the opportunity to survive, to live, to succeed, or to even self-actualize or what's not. So yeah, you can see where the priorities lie.
All right. We're gonna move on to another topic.
So soon.
Yes.
Definitely come back to that.
Taken away from your shine.
No, man. We got definitely bring Felicia in here too.
Yes.
Definitely.
Another system that is used on a daily basis in Barbados is the transport system. We have a lot of complaints going around about our public bus service. You have any experiences?
I can tell you, I read an article, a very good article. I can't remember who it was that did the investigative journalism, but I think they went to a particular part in St. Andrew. And St. Andrew has been a trouble route for years. I cannot believe in the year of our Lord, 2025, we still have not solved our transportation problems in regards to the transport board. And there are people who still wait 4 hours for a bus. And then there are people who are telling me now that, listen, if you miss that first bus in the morning, you ain't seeing it till 12 o'clock.
Yes.
That is madness.
Well, I live in St. John, and sometimes you will have to wait 3 or 4 hours to get a bus.
Right. And I've actually heard some lodge students complaining as well that the bus service for them to get to school is not ideal and it's not adequate. So then what are we doing? What are we doing? We're importing buses, but then yet.
Yeah, we just got 30 new buses.
Okay. And the TAP program is still going on, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what is going on?
So why hasn't the bus service improved?
to be honest, right, I think it's a situation where that we tend to say, well, listen, this is the policy. We put policies in place, but then there's no follow-up. There's no evaluation, right? There's no implementation and evaluation. You might implement, but there's no evaluation at the end of it. So then you just implement it and say, yeah, it's good, it's good, and that's it.
Oh, on one of the platforms I had during my election, I said you have to listen very carefully to what government says, but you also have to listen to what government is not saying.
It's very true. That's very true, Doc.
You would think 30 new buses, all right, well, that's a significant injection of transport capabilities. So public transportation in Barbados will be a lot better. What government hasn't said is how many of the previous fleet members are out of service or have to be retired. Because you would think just having 30 extra buses, a lot of problem solved. It should be so much better than it was before.
Problem should be solved.
Is it?
No.
Well, there's a funny
So
situation.
what's not being said?
Yeah, there's a funny situation in St. Lucie where passengers have to get out the bus for it to get up Sutherland Hill in 2025.
Wow.
This is unimaginable.
Right. Okay.
For me, I think one of the major problems of the transport system, we can have 100 new buses tomorrow, and we can have available drivers for them, electric buses and everything. But if we do not put structure in place, we are going to be still at square one. And hence, my major problem with the transportation service, it's not really the buses or the ZRs or the ZNs or what they are, but I think the major problem to me is the routes. And I think that Barbados needs to reroute its transportation service. Unfortunately, I do not live in the country. I live in the best part of Barbados, is Christchurch. And in Christchurch, every 5 minutes, you will see a ZR Pro 11.
That is true.
And then followed by the bus, then followed by 3 ZRs.
That is true.
And thing. And one of the reasons why there's so ZRs in that row is economy.
Yeah, money making road.
Money making.
Yeah.
That's the money making road.
It's where a lot of the money is taken place.
The businesses are,
and
hotels and everything like that. Yeah.
But we have to find, there are areas in my constituency in Christchurch, like Edie Village, home St. David's, where you hardly see a bus once a while. So even though we're in Christchurch, we are still having issues in certain parts. But then there are certain parts that are overloaded with too much on one road. So what, for me, is we need to take a sit down and look at the structure of the road system in Barbados and reroute a lot of
licenses are allocated
and how they are allocated, and see if we can reroute a lot of the transportation, because we can bring all the buses we can have in Barbados, and if we don't do adjustments and make some serious changes, we're going to still end up with the same problem of down St. Andrew, down St. Lucie, down St. John, that buses and people have to still wait. And because of that, it's affect children coming to school late
and getting home.
Late.
Yes. Even not to bring up St. John, but Mount Table School is very difficult. Mount Table is located in St. John itself.
Yeah.
And students that live in St. John have a very hard time getting to school via the bus in St. John. I mean, you could be located 10 minutes away from the school and you can't get there. The buses will come on evenings. School finishes at, let me say, 2:30 or 3 for some schools. And the bus will not come to 4:30 or 5. And these are little primary school children that can't get home.
So a teacher needs to remain.
Yes.
Needs to remain there as well.
Yeah, give me the vote and watch, man.
And you're seeing this situation in all areas in Barbados. So we move on to, we have a comment from Kamhar. But didn't Mottley lambast the DLP and promise that the bus service will be much improved 7 years ago? Damien.
So, remember what was said, right? Give me the vote.
And
watch me. I've been watching. We've all been watching. I've not seen anything. If you're going to make promises, keep them. And so far, I've not seen a promise kept. in the covenant of hope, which I think we've now dubbed the covenant of despair, because there's nothing that came out of that covenant that was actually adhered to. A stronger voice for the people, more autonomy for individuals in the economy, more a safer Barbados. Nothing has been done. So I find it hypocritical that you could sit here and say, well, 7 years ago, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to accomplish this, I'm going to accomplish that, and it's not been done. But yet the media has not highlighted any of these failures. And that is something that needs to change, because we need an unbiased media. We need a media that is going to speak truth to power in regards to the people's issues. Don't get on the radio and then say, oh, I don't know this candidate, or oh, I don't think that the other party is ready. Focus on what the people really need to hear. They need to see the news and see what is going on in Barbados. So no promises have been kept, but a lot of promises have been made.
Well said. Now, under this ministry, which is the Ministry of Transport and Works, the state of the roads come under this ministry. I've passed a big, massive well this morning. There, a well. I almost had to buy a new vehicle. Talk about the state of the road.
What I would say on that, it just seems, yes, there are roads being done. I'm not going to break down that no roads are not being done. It just seems that the wrong roads are being done. And they're being done at the wrong times in terms of working hours. Or they start one project, start the next one, start the other project. A lot started
and not completed.
And you can see a lot of that in the countryside. Also, too, we really need to go back and pay attention to our bridges, and we have to refurbish all of our bridges in Barbados, because not only in the countryside per se, but like in St. James and stuff, over there by Lancaster, they have bridges over there that I think that needs to be investigated. So I think we need to do an analysis of all the bridges to make sure that they are still equipped and still road safety, because everything is being worn. Everything happens, but we really need to ask the question now on the question on concrete roads versus the tar.
Asphalt.
Correct. We know that we are getting heavier vehicles, we're getting newer vehicles, we're getting electric vehicles, we're getting the different vehicles. A conversation needs to be have in terms of concrete roads in certain communities. As we want to start with communities and then come out to main roads, because of the long lasting, it's a heavy cost to get them done. But in the States, they last longer.
Yes, they do.
In terms of traversing. So we really need to have a real sit-down conversation about transportation. I take it very serious on this topic because it is millions of dollars being used to do our roads. That could have do schools and do new buildings. Hospitals. We can build a hospital and do different things. And if we're using the money for transportation, let's get it right, because it just seems that we're doing the roads that don't need paving, that already can pave, and we repave it.
Correct, like the highway. How many times you saw the highway done in the last couple of years?
Yeah, there are different parts that have been done at least 3 times or 4 times within the 7-year term. And then there are roads that they're just trying to shy away from and not being done. So we need to really address the situation of road network. We need to address the situation of moving towards a concrete aspect in certain aspects. If we can't do the whole of Barbados, let us focus on the countryside that will probably does have the Scotland district. They have the thing that you put more concrete there, and really look at it. We need to really sit down and deal with this situation. We have a lot of engineers in Barbados, a lot of young people that have done engineering, both in Trinidad and Barbados, that can come back and put some serious discussion on this topic.
And note that we, the people of Barbados, residents here, taxpayers, have already contributed towards this. The government has raked in a boatload of money at the fuel pubs. which was supposed to be the road tax replacement. Yet, when a road needs to be fixed, we have to get a loan or loans from CAF. Go figure. That said, yeah, the issue with how or when roads are being done, a lot of started projects, not many finish. You start this road, okay, all right, so I have to bypass, go to a different road, but then you're working on that other road as well, and then you're working on that other road. I drive through St. Thomas 4 times a day, most school days, so you know it's a hot mess all over. Wear and tear on your vehicle that you don't get compensated for, and we're in the rainy season. So what was a little crater yesterday is now a gaping pothole by tomorrow morning.
And we can't talk about roads and not talk about Scotland District roads. Millions have been put into this Scotland District road. We have been receiving finance from China, and the roads still have not been fixed.
They're trying to thing down there. That's all it. I tell you, they're trying to think.
Where it seems that we wax poetic about the roads all the time. It's always been a political issue from I was a lad, basically. And it seems like we don't have a system in place to address where the work needs to be done the most. But it seems like these road works seem to be done for optics rather than to facilitate, helping drivers to traverse their roads easily. What happened when the World Cup came? There was a whole lot of pave. It's this and where was this industry when we needed it? Because we don't need it. We don't need an administration that's going to do things for sure. We need an administration that's going to do things because it benefits the people. And there've been people who've been crying out for road works in certain areas for eons. But what I am seeing now is that there are certain individuals who take it upon themselves to go on social media and they like video like what is this crater that is here at the corner of this road and that, and then you might probably see some action in regards to getting that particular issue addressed. And I would beseech my people to keep doing it. Keep doing it, because it seems like the best way to get something out of this administration is to highlight it or to embarrass them. Because it should not be that. It shouldn't be that, but it appears to be that.
And if we don't be careful, another issue that's creeping up is flooding. Of a country and of a leader, we also have about climate change. I'm recognizing that even the roads that are paved, I'm seeing now starting to see more increase in flooding. Now, I don't know if ministers or the technical people can go one day when the rain falling. I don't know if they see the same rain that the same roads that we drive. So, for instance, in Warrens, when you're approaching, coming down from UE, coming down to Warrens, right there by the roundabout, it's flooding. It has flooded for years. We paved there and it's still flooding. So there's an issue with what?
Drainage.
Not just that. If the road wasn't level correctly.
Correct. So we have an issue there. We need to what? Fix it. Then there's another issue of out by Haggett Hall, where not even before, Haggett Hall. Now out there's now flood. Approach the roundabout. That needs to be what?
Fixed.
Then there's another issue if you get by Pine Hill Dairy, when you come around by CBC, there's a little
I know the area.
When rainfall, it is flooded and it's getting a serious on the road. What I'm just trying to say is that we as Barbadians can identify all the areas that are flooded and that the roads were done. And it's still the same problem. Red Plus 5 said it's the same damn thing in the same effect, only at a different time. Like we were talking about the middle passages, right? The only middle passages they're talking about now is these roads. And it just seems that we are fixing roads just to pave and cover fast, but we're not really fixing the true quality of the roads, such as the drainage, such as the leveling, so that we do not only just have smooth roads, but we have roads that can bear the true flooding that I am starting to see increase.
And these roads that you call, these are major roads in Barbados on the highway.
And that leads to major persons traversing in Barbados for a lot of business or for residents.
And you could probably correct me if I'm if I'm wrong, wasn't there a discussion in Parliament about passing off the responsibility of drainage onto the Barbadian people in regards to constructing drains? I think I could be wrong.
I've not heard about it.
Yes, yeah, I believe that. I believe that there was a discussion in Parliament where now that they're implementing this new policy where that when you are doing construction on, say, a home or say an apartment, you now have the responsibility for providing drainage, which is something that I believe that the government is something that should take, that should take responsibility for. Because then, what if there's a, how should I say, even though that you might have town and country planning signing off on it, I think that the government still at the end of the day is the ones that should be maintaining the drains.
Yeah.
Because they would know how best to service those drains, how to approach in regards to providing the adequate drainage so that we will have the runoff for the water. And I feel that's something we need to invest in some sort of studies where that how we can catch some of this water that is running off. Because I think seriously, too much water is running off and we're not catching it. And we are apparently a water scarce country. So they say. But at the end of the day, I think that we need to put more thought into how we implement our drains and how we capture water so that we can ensure that individuals have clean running water in all parts of the island.
Well, this ministry comes under, you know who? Miss Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Street lights also come under Miss Bradshaw.
And that is another issue.
And we had a lot of complaints about the street lights in St. James North.
In St. James North. Yep.
A whole highway, no street lights. Other areas in Barbados, no street lights. Not done. They promised that China was going to send how many?
400 street lights.
Still no street lights.
And that is crazy because then how can you feel safe walking down a stretch of highway or a stretch of road to your home and there's no street lights? Just utter darkness. And especially if you are a female, probably a nurse who is coming home from a late shift in an area that is poorly lit, and then someone takes advantage of you, then what? Heaven forbid we have any situation like that ever happening again. But I think this government needs to mobilize. If you're going to put out lofty promises, then you need to deliver. Because at the end of the day, who benefits? The people.
What I would say about the street lights is that recently I've recognized that the lights out by Graham Hall, or which we call the Bermuda Triangle, is out. Then the lights coming down, approaching St. Lawrence on the highway, but the agriculture is very dark for the last couple of days. And I hope that all those who are hearing me right now, can you please fix them? Because those two areas are the areas where there's high serious, not crime, but high serious
deviancy,
fatality
okay,
turns by the Bermuda Triangle, and a lot of serious accidents have occurred. I was passing on mornings and then see cars in the trees, over by the banks, flip over. I just wonder if it was the Houdini out there. I think hence it got in the Bermuda Triangle. And even there needs to be properly investigated. If the problem over there is if it's the level, if it's slope, if it's something. But we have to address the streetlights. And then the issue of streetlights for me, which is hurting for me for overall, is the streetlights in the country. If you drive in the country late at night, God forbid, and a transport world buses, the new transport world coming with those bright lights, you bet anything can't grow. But we really need to address streetlights in the countryside and then on the highways where there are pockets now starting to develop, which is weird because now it is now becoming like a norm of different pockets now of streetlights not working in an area and a whole group, not just a one or two, but now a whole group. So I hope that we fix these streetlights on the highway because those are, especially when persons are coming from crop over events. So normal crop over man. And when we come to the crop over events or the UV and and the Valor and the Eden and the News and the different facts that happened this weekend. I don't know about them.
That I wouldn't be.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
know about them, you know, I just happen to know about them, you know, that you people get home safe because really you don't want to hear a mother crying. Yeah, the show was allowed to go and they went to the party and stuff, but they kind of answered because of the lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because when you're intoxicated, you shouldn't be driving first of all. But if you do, you have a partner driving. But if something happens, it happens. But then there was all this talk about breathalyzer tests, and then you know, I told somebody that this government is like one step
forward and 2 step backwards.
I saw the paper recently.
The trembling too.
That the it was, I can't remember what it was. That it was supposed to start June 1st, but not the tint.
Not the tint. He
Not
don't
the
need
tint.
tint.
Something that was supposed to start June 1st, and I push it back
to October.
1st. Oh, the tax on the car rentals.
Yes.
So they pushed that back, the tint pushed back, the ID pushed back.
But they're more focused on the tint than the breathalyzer.
That's what pushed back. I don't think the Barbados even remember that. Right? But
I wonder why.
No
I wonder why
No
they don't want to touch breathalyzer. That's
Alcohol.
been wrong
Yeah, alcohol
to be
has
dealt
to stop.
with since like forever. But all of a sudden, from September last year, tint became the priority for roads.
Yeah.
And money spent on tint meters as opposed to breathalyzers.
It's true.
So what I would tell you is that we just seem to be going forward and then 2 steps backwards in everything.
In everything.
And in transport, we really are starting to see that occurring. It's sad to say.
All right. So we're gonna end that part of the discussion, and we're gonna move on to culture. But we're gonna look at it from a different perspective. The economic side of crop over. You know, tourism is the main money earner industry in Barbados. Crop over is one of the biggest things that attract tourists to Barbados. We have Mr. Jones here, who's not just an educator, he's a party animal and an event planner too.
I am a cultural practitioner, a registered cultural practitioner.
He has been involved in the Crop Over Festival for many years. He has been involved in UE Carnival as well. So Quincy Jones, talk to us about the economic side of Crop Over.
A couple of years ago, when I was in Crop Over in the early, when I was 18, where it was a group of us, a group of friends, and Shari, Ross, I can call some names. All of us decided to have a band. And we were just jokingly saying we could do a band. But then we actually did the band. And then we did it. I continued with it for 10 years. Called Youth Explosion. And back then, you could have gotten your materials and everything under the cost of $7,000. For me, that was a lot of money. But $7,000. But now, crop over is really an expense. There are issues right now in crop over that people are not talking about.
Well, you will speak about it tonight.
Yeah, I know, just highlight one or two. You gotta be careful, you know. I'm a bad leader. But one of the things is that a lot of persons are not signing up with the bands to jump for crop over. A lot of people see the costumes as very expensive. But what the consumers got to understand that the bands, doing a band is very expensive now. A music truck, for what's called a container truck, with the sound system back then in 2008 and 9 was just $3,000. Now it's nearly $13,000.
What?
To just put that one trailer truck on the road for only 6 hours of that big day.
That's 4 times the cost.
It's 4 times the cost. So let's think about it. The trailer, so we have to get the trailer truck, which is $14,000. Then you have to get DJs, at least 4 DJs. Back then, DJs used to be $250 and $3. Now DJs are $1,000, and for crop over, you might get DJs at $2,000 per. And they're not playing for the whole day. You know? They're just playing for a couple of seconds, and then going to another truck. Then the other issue of security, and because we have to boost the security, but boosting security means the increase of money.
So
back then, you had the security officer. You could get security officer $150. Now security officers are between $250 and $300 or $350. And if you really have a big band, $1,000 to nearly $400. So the cost, the economy cost of doing a band, right, is very, very expensive. And hence, even though band leaders do not want to pass on the full cost on funding, but they have no choice because sponsorship into the bands has definitely decreased. And if there is sponsorship, they're not going towards the bands, they're going towards the NCF as a whole, as the big shareholder. And what I found very interesting is that we have the costumes, right? They're expensive, but they just see them as expensive. But for me, I see them as reasonable because there is a lot of upfront costs in doing the band.
My question, are the costumes made here or you bring them from overseas?
Now, bands have the option. Some bands are doing their costumes from overseas, where they get the prototypes, send it overseas, and get it done. There are some bands in Barbados that are still doing them locally and getting involved and getting other entities and different persons involved. So there's still a rotation of the economy going on in Barbados right now. But it's not like how it used to be years ago, where out of the 20 bands, 18 were doing locally and 2 were overseas. But now we probably only have like 5 doing it locally and 18 bands doing overseas to bring it. Because at the end of the day, it's foreign exchange going out. And knowing that the cost of the costume, to try to get down the cost so that the cost so the jumper can jump, you have to get it from overseas. So some people are going to China and New York and different things to bring the costume, to get the whole costume.
So the costume makers here are earning way less than they were years ago.
Yeah, but they're charging more.
Well,
because
they have less work, so they have to make some money.
Yeah. So the problem is that Cropova has to take a revamp. Even though Cropova is here, we're seeing less competitions. So the quality of music is not how it used to be. Back then, Barbados used to lead in Cropova music. Now, the other Caribbean countries are leading in Cropova.
Yeah.
We have to be careful now of the other what's called the smaller countries, such as St. Vincent and St. Lucia going on. That has boosted their carnival experience.
Why are there fewer competitions?
A certain singer may tell you, ask Carol Roberts.
The National Carol Festival.
Carol Festival.
What I would say, and I'm not getting down that line either. That is my culture, but that might be my CEO.
Yes.
And I respect that. But what is happening is that we are seeing less competitions. Once again, we used to have the party Marner, and we used to have the judging of the bands, the couple of pop. So we used to have a lot of competitions back then. Now we are seeing less competitions. We see a watered down calypso, where back then you had to sing 2 songs, and now we're only singing one song. So and a lot of Canadians think that Cropova has now become a watered down festival, and not much emphasis is being pushed towards saving mass, saving the artistic of Cropova. Even though we boast and boost of doing new things in Cropova, changing a route or
that's cosmetic.
Just putting a different venue to different venue.
That's cosmetic.
Right now, what I would say, what's surviving Cropova right now is all the garden parties that are right now,
which are very expensive.
They're very expensive, but what I would say is that the garden party is what making Cropova right now. So the whole week of Cropova is no longer about going to the picnic crop, going to the party Marner, or going to thing. The last week of Cropova now is going to this private party, going to this private jump.
Yeah,
and
the weekend, the weekend before.
And Cropova has been
right. So Cropova has been replaced by different names, so go 4.0 or 1.0 or 2.0, something like that. But so what's happening is that Cropova is now becoming if you don't have the $300 to get the all-inclusive.
This is $300 per party, by the way.
Yeah, per party, per event. People are just deciding where to go. What's happening now is that they have what is called the Junior Fest, which is the weekly fest that's now attracting the people, the public. So you have the Soca State of Mind. You have Ramasoka. They have the one to choose the energy chooser with RAS. So there's chooser with RAS, Soca State of Mind. On Wednesday, Thursday is only soaking in museum. Friday is Ramasoka. Sundays is Sugar Sundays. So it's sugar soca or something like that. But the thing is, it is now these events that are that the average Barbadians are going to hear the artists, are going to understand crop over. And some of us cannot go and pay the $300 in crop over. And it is sad because you're not getting the full experience of crop over.
And the events that were canceled, which were events sponsored by NCF, these events were way cheaper.
Correct.
You could have gone to.
Back then we had what was called the cavalcades.
Yes.
And the cavalcades used to go into all the constituencies. Now you don't know if they got something called the sweet line. Not as sweet right now. But
and you had the port lines on Friday. Yeah.
So and all that used to build the crop over into the crop over. And that's what really had the Soca Royale 10 to 10.
10 to 10.
And even lyric event, I was shocked that lyric event was so early this year.
Yeah, this is right. This is usually the day before the jump out. The sun,
So it's like everything is changing. And crop over has evolved. And
you ain't gonna talk with that. Me is fat.
I'm not getting involved. I never made.
No, I'm not touching that one.
For sure.
I'm not touching.
But it is. What I would say is that we have lost that connection of crop over. I remember when I was young, going to the stadium, and the stadium used to be burst.
Remember that?
You couldn't. I couldn't find a seat. You had to stand. And when Red Classic and Gabby and all of them, Romeo come up on the stage, you used to hear the real calypso. But now we're censoring the Calypsonians.
My best experience of crop over was when it was down East Coast. And the competition at East Coast was a very high level back then.
Yes,
and since it moved, it has not been the same.
And that because of the quality of music. We used to invest back then into the artists. Now artists, studios are charging artists maybe 4,000, 5,000. Back then it was just a little 500, a little 1,000.
Okay.
So everything has gone up. I'm glad to see that there's still young people. I think right now what is saving crop over right this year
is the young people.
Is the junior minor.
The junior minor.
Really?
In junior minor, I am starting to see a lot of young people. I gotta give kudos where the kudos are given. I must say that they pay emphasis a lot on the juniors, in terms of the junior Kadooment. There are more junior Kadooment bands than the crop over bands and 4-day morning bands this year. Junior Kadooment is gonna be big.
That's good.
And it involves both private bands like the Betty West and the Kevin Smalls and there's all people, but then they have the school bands that have now playing a major role. So I would say that the good thing about crop over this year is that the juniors are saving crop over. And if you go to any of the competitions in terms of the junior Kadooment, and the juniors are singing some dynamic, powerful, and some of them real small, you know. I got some. You got some big words and big voices. But when it comes to the seniors now, we are starting to see the same old faces going to the finals. Back in the juniors, you're seeing new faces, new talent emerging. But I guarantee you, I don't have to be the judge this year. I can tell who you're getting finals. They got who.
Tell me.
They might got Mr. Clark.
Let
me see if I can call them and see if they get in before you. I won't even say that it's me. I thought you before you.
iWeb.
FTC do a song she would get in.
Classic.
Karen Clark has a very powerful song.
What about classic?
Classic, if you get that far.
If you
are not censored. Spencer always get in there. I don't even know how he does it. He does it. You have Donella. You have, it got the same names over
and over.
And the problem is, are we really developing? Is crop over really going forward? And we have to really reflect. And I think crop over right now needs to really revamp because the other Caribbean countries have modeled us and have now surpassed us.
There's a comment online from Lois Carl. There's too much carnival in crop over. Some people would say food and fatting all the time. So why is it that our culture seems to be just food and fat?
We are losing the identity of what crop over is. Back then was the aspect of burning Mr. Harding. We don't have that anymore. Even though that they tried to do a half a Harding on the stage at the opening gala, you know, the burning Harding was once. The whole aspect of the Kings and who won and the whole King cutting was a major part of our festival. So, and the Fort Lords, the Fort concerts, the different readings and stuff on the different masks and whole crop over. That is what is separating Barbados now, because if you go to St. Vincent now, they still have Jab Jab. They still promote the iconic of their carnival persons are still part of the festival. Actually, it opens up the festivals. It opens up every event, including their jumper.
And in Trinidad, the steel pan is still a big thing.
And steel pan is a big thing with competition. And if you got Exodus versus the other one in town,
and the French islands, like the Dominicans, the bouillon is still a strong thing.
So you're still seeing that they're incorporating their history in the mass. But we have now
taken our
decreased our
history
and making it more like all-inclusive events. I call it events and not all-inclusive crop over events. There's a difference between events and crop over events. You're still hearing some events still playing not crop over music and playing other genres.
Yeah.
In Trinidad, that can't happen. In St. Vincent, that can't happen. When you're a crop over festival, you're still in crop over mode. I don't know if it has to do with the ear. And the problem is, I can't blame the radio, because when you have over 2,000 songs, people only want to hear one particular song.
Yeah.
Right? And good luck to those who are singing in the party monarch. And I wish them best of luck if there's who will win the road march. But I got my little hands on lead pipe. What was the song?
Oh my goodness.
The grass, the fence or something. I got
that is the consensus I'm hearing among my people.
Yes, and it's sad because I am not hearing that number 2 and number 3. There's another one I like, but it's a little bit too dirty. With lyric, 911.
Oh geez.
Right, but I might got call the police in here. But what you were saying is that back then we had so much songs that we had opportunity. We didn't know where to play Alison Hines. We didn't know to play lyric and stuff. A Grainer. But now, right now, we are just seeing.
If we get a one song that is popular, we gravitate toward because it seems as if the art form isn't really taken seriously anymore.
Yes.
It seems like you're just you put out a song to be seen, to be heard, you know what I mean? But not a lot goes into the artistry anymore. Which I was wondering if we could fix that by adding our mainstay calypso into curricula, into those who might have that musical intelligence. If you want to, from a very early age, maybe you can ground them, teach them, and teach them to how to bring the melodies and the innuendos.
What we can do to bring back crop over is that instead of teaching robotics and coding, I'm not saying we're not supposed to do it,
right?
But
find a space.
We can find space how we can develop crop over and divide the classes into the different categories in terms of mass making, in terms of mass making is very important because bending, warrior bending is its own. But the girls now they wear bras, but that is an art form
itself.
Then there's the music and the art, the whole studio in terms of DJing. That's right now some young people are getting into DJing. So if we can develop what's called the enrichment program, which was done years ago, and bring it back into schools, where the last 4 periods on Friday was not about schoolwork. But the last 4 periods is about developing our culture,
creativity,
Really?
our
creativity.
Yes, it was done. It's called the enrichment program. But since people come in to play, everything disappeared.
I've never experienced that at school. Never.
No,
It was all subjects.
no.
Yeah.
What was we went to?
Queen's College.
No problem.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
Oh shoot!
Football.
Oh shoot! Oh shoot!
So
I would never attack these.
Right, I observe a pop over, I'm not into the party stuff, but I like a good social commentary.
yeah.
Like the fellas fighting to right, or when they do right and sing, you hear a song and back.
Yeah.
And how did we get to that place? I remember biting social commentaries. But you hear about being banned. Oh, that can get banned. This is offending this body. You sure you want to sing that? Back to the whole point of being afraid to speak. Because the social commentary was how those express the concerns of the people, and that art form talk about issues of the day. Clever writing, clever writing, absolutely. And you don't seem to get as many of those as before. And when you have one that's really biting, as we would say, you have to worry about it being bad, not love.
Yeah, the artists these days now are frightened to say anything about the government or about the Prime Minister.
And that says a lot. When you have a people afraid to speak out, then you know that there's an authoritarian regime that is in control. For me, right? For me, what I would love to see is Bajan artists being put first. Right, I would love to see Bajan artists highlight some of these big fets, these big soca fets, rather than importing talent from the outside and giving them top billing. I would love to see a Bajan artist given top billing, because we can't expect to foster a culture and keep a culture if we're not going to promote our own, if we're not going to give them that #1 spot and highlight them and give them that top billing. Because for me, while I might say that, there's an element of derogatory lyrics coming into our soca now, right? But there are still quality artists out there who can, when they put together a melody, it moves you. And I listen to the music that comes out now, and there's still 1 or 2 people that can do it. But if we want to enhance our culture, we have to put Bajan artists first. We have to put Bajan artistry first. We have to highlight them and tell them, well, listen, we believe in you. We believe in you to push our product. And you might never know. Somebody overseas might see a top bill artist and bring them overseas, and they might become international. So then that's how you bring more awareness to our art form, to Karpova, to the artistry, to the history and to the culture and everything. So for me, I would love some of these promoters to invest more in Bajan artists. And you might never know. If you invest in the home product, it might actually improve. They might actually tell themselves, well, listen, I might need to cut out these lyrics because these people are listening for more creative lyrics rather than derogatory lyrics. And you might find that maybe these particular songs that are more creative might be the ones that might go regionally and internationally. And then our art form may not only be saved, but it will also improve. So that was what I want to see specifically.
So one of because we only have like 2 minutes left.
Wow.
So my question is, who would you say is in charge of our cultural development? Please.
Us. We are in charge of our own country.
Yep.
We are in charge of how we direct our affairs. When we cast our votes, we determine that the policy that we want. So if we want to see a change in culture, we have to really get up and go and seek that enhancement of investment opportunities. We have to work together and try to be mindful. Band leaders need to work together. The collectionists need to work together, so that at the end of the day, it is not only about the DLP and the B. Remember I said at the beginning,
right.
It's about making sure that Barbados culture is at its top level and that people are taking our model as the example. We were the beacon of Karpova, or better, the festival of the year, the sweetest summer festival. need to get back there. We're not as sweet as we used to be.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we're sour. We're sour at all, because Barbados needs to get back. But we definitely invest in our young people, invest in young people that want to be artists. I have seen some young people coming through my band house, want to be on my truck, and they're presenting their portfolios and ideas of where they want to be on the trucks. I am glad to see that, but we need to invest in every aspect. And the only way we can invest if we believe in ourselves. I hear a promoter say that no local artists can't perform on the 40-foot stage. But you see, that mindset
is what defeats us. Yeah.
So what we should be saying, come and perform on our 40-foot stage and say that this is our culture, this is what we want, and this is our movement. So I would say to the public of Barbados, it is up to us.
We are the ones who should determine that, and not outside sources or outside interests. We have, I from my vantage point, not as nearly as involved like Quincy. From my vantage point, we have adopted a lot of practices from outside and then call it, and then say it's our culture.
Our own.
But what was indigenously ours for decades is you're confirming it's been fading away. And that seems to be part of that general trend or theme of outside interest determining what's happening in Barbados, as opposed to Barbadians determining what's happening in Barbados.
Damien?
Right. So for me, right, yes, I agree with both of you. It's the people, right? But who are the representatives of the people? The administration, that is the ruling government. And I believe that if you want to invest in our culture, save our culture, or promote our culture, you then have to put, build foundations into our schools, build cultural foundations into our tertiary institutions, into the private sector, help give concessions to those individuals who might need it in regards to getting the band off the ground or even getting a FET off the ground. If we're going to invest in bringing a capitalist mindset into privatization, other things, to make money for other people, make money for the people, so you have to set the guides into how you want to see culture and history, especially crop over, to grow. And once you set that mindset and you say, you know what, this is our plan, we want you to buy into us, all of the stakeholders, private investment, however, and we will grant concessions to help those who want to get crop over to an international awareness for people to come from all over to buy in and to have fun, whether we just being a eat and fat. That's what you call it, food and fat.
You speak to underpinning philosophy. What is the current underpinning philosophy, if there is one?
If there's one, so then if you don't have a direction, or if you don't have, or you have like maybe a semblance of a direction, you will get lost. So that is where I stand.
My last thing is that we need to take charge. We need to take charge of our culture. I know that the NCF is trying, because I've seen them trying. But sometimes it is not so much the NCF that is creating the problems. It's sometimes us. Everybody come in with their own individual plan or policy, or want to do their own thing. And we need to control that. We need to work together to make this crop over. Not only NCF and the Ministry of Culture, but we need to get everybody, all the stakeholders, all the cultural practitioners together, and let us sit down and make the way forward. Because I think I always say it's about the people, and we got that charge. So I hope that like put listening to me, that give you blood.
So our final thing, just tell the viewers a few things that you would like to see improve in Barbados right now.
Lots of.
Any aspect?
Any aspect. That would make us the real paradise.
Clearly security. I mean, the matter of crime, security. I mean, law enforcement spoke of gangs. Law enforcement spoke of domestic terrorism. Survey recently confirmed what we could all see, hear, feel, and sense ourselves, that a majority of Barbadians, certainly respondents in that survey, 90%, were fearful. Confirmed that our activities aren't what they used to be, because you have to consider security, safety, You know, so that will be the immediate thing. The Barbados that we've seen in the last 7 years, the last year, from a safety security standpoint, is not what we're accustomed to. You know, so that is what this, I believe, distresses many, if not majority, and also the matter of the economy. You can't get away from that. There is a huge disconnect between the macroeconomic indicators that central bank and government are using and people's felt daily realities.
Yeah.
There's a gulf between those two issues. People don't have money, like government pretends people have, because they must know, because I'm sure the constituents are complaining. Persons do not feel secure. They don't feel as if government is taking the matter of the crime very seriously.
Damien?
I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Wickham said in regards to economics, but focus more on the cost of living. We really need to address that. We need to bring back the middle class. We need to bring back those individuals who's earning power and their spending power stayed in the home and basically affected those in a positive way, rather than having them going out and engaging in deviant behaviors and stuff just to make a dollar. Because we need to make Barbados more affordable. It has been something that has gotten out of control in the last 7 years. And going back to the covenant of despair, going back to that was one of the promises as well, basically. And yet I've not seen any fruition in regards to that. You cannot have people struggling to earn a dollar in Barbados and then act as if we are the international standard of the world. You cannot. And then you cannot privatize one of our social foundations, and it's carrying into capitalist agenda where that now you have to pay for healthcare and then talk about, oh, the people will benefit from this. No, that has always been our determined right. Healthcare has been something that was a fundamental right for us, just like education. Healthcare is a fundamental right. So we need to make things affordable in regards to how people live, eat, pay their bills, pay their taxes, what's not. And we need to bring healthcare to a standard where that everybody can benefit and not spend 4 or 5 days and die inside A&E.
Quincy, your wrap up.
We must put community first. And I keep on saying this is our home, not mine, it's not yours, this is ours. So we have to rise up to it, not out of despair, but out of determination. We must plant the seeds of justice, of service, and of progress. I must let every drip of water act as a cup. We must make sure that every voice is raised in unity, and then we must make sure that that cup is filled again. I would say that Barbados is not a lost paradise. It is a land of promise, and together we will make it happen again and shine bright.
Gentlemen, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you very, very much for joining me tonight. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you and seeing your comments next week on DLP TV. You can follow us on our social media handles on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you and see you next week.